Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video. Today I'm just super cozy. I am actually in a hotel room. My work planned a super last minute work retreat, so I am currently in Tempe, Arizona, and they booked a hotel for me and I am here. So don't mind the background, don't mind me being lazy. I just wanted to make this quick little video and I wanted to give you all a law cycle recap. So I want to talk about all the schools that I applied to. I want to talk about the schools that accepted me, waitlisted, and rejected me. And then I want to talk a little bit about some JD Next tips. I've just been getting a lot of questions over and over again, and I want to address a lot. That way, if you have the same question, you can just watch this video and get your answer. Obviously, if you would like to talk more about your situation, or you just want to talk to me, I'm open. Like, please feel free to reach out. I've been talking to so many people. I've done Zoom meetings, I've done phone calls, I've done text, I've done TikTok messages, I've done Instagram messages. You let me know and I am here to help, and I really truly mean that. So with all that being said, let's get into today's video and let's get into my 2025 law cycle recap. Something to add real quickly is I use the exact same personal statement for every single law school except for my top choice, which was University of Arizona. And the reason why I added a little bit extra is because obviously it was my first choice, but also because I already went there during my undergrad, so I kind of had more razzle dazzle to add anyways. But other than that, I used the exact same personal statement for each law school. Obviously, whenever I said like X law school is a good fit for me, because I changed the name to every single law school that I was applying to. So I was very meticulous about that. And I was very meticulous to make sure I was researching law schools and using the appropriate name of their clinic. For example, like if they have an immigration rights clinic, it's not called the same thing everywhere. Sometimes it's called immigration advocacy, sometimes it's called immigration court clinic. Like, I made sure that I was very meticulous and made no mistakes when I was talking to a certain law school versus when I was talking to another. So that's some advice that I would offer, is make sure you are meticulous before you hit submit on your materials. But other than that, I use the exact same personal statement, like the core of it. I use the exact same addendums and the exact same resume, exact same personal statements. So across the board, my application to all these law schools was about the same. Even after I got rejected and I wanted to change everything, I didn't. So make sure you trust your gut. Make sure you trust how well and how much time you put into your personal statement. Trust that what you wrote is a reflection of you and something you would be very proud of people reading and law schools reading. So as I mentioned in my previous video and earlier, I applied to 18 law schools in total. The reason why I applied to 18 law schools is because I just really, really wanted to go to law school this year, and I just didn't even care what law school I got accepted into. I just knew that I wanted to go this cycle this year. I think that has to do a lot with like my age. I'm 25, so I feel really old, and also I feel really behind. Obviously, I know there's going to be people that say like 25 is not that old, or gap years are not a bad thing. Taking gap years to be in the workforce actually really helped my resume and my application as a whole. But when I compare myself to other people that went to law school after we graduated together, I definitely felt kind of like that pressure, like I need to catch up, I've been slacking. Obviously, I know that comparison steals joy, but that's just what I was going through throughout this whole cycle. So I'm not going to go in any particular order, but I do want to talk about the first three law schools that got back to me in the cycle, because I want to talk about the emotions that I went through and the self-doubt, and I just want to give you all kind of like my experience. That way, if you're going through the same thing, you can also reassure yourself while you're going through this process. So with all that being said, let me talk about the first law school that I applied to, and actually the first law school that I heard back from, and that was Arizona State University. So I actually applied to the school the day that applications opened, so I think it was August, And then I went to go take a tour visit of this law school. And they have like this thing where they promise that they would get back to you within 20 days of sending your application, which is kind of great, but it's also really scary. So once I hit submit on the application, I kind of knew that something was going to be coming up soon. And unfortunately, Arizona State University was my first rejection. So the first law school that I heard back from to start off this whole process was a rejection. And that was so scary. That was honestly just really negative for me, if I'm being very honest. I didn't actually even like the campus when I went, but when I got the rejection, I just had self-sabotage thoughts, and I was thinking like, is this rejection going to be a reflection of how every other school is going to respond to me? Does this rejection mean that my application was not strong enough, that my stats are just too low to go to law school, that my personal statement is horrible and I didn't even write a good personal statement? Does this rejection mean that I'm not a good candidate for law school? Everything just came pouring into my mind. And like I said, I didn't even like the school, but I was just so concerned that this was going to start like a domino effect of just negative experiences. And it put me in a really like bad space, if I'm being very honest with you. It even made me like question if I needed to go back and rewrite my personal statement from scratch. It made me question everything. If you find yourself in this position, I think it's normal and I think it's okay to have these thoughts for like the first maybe 10-30 minutes, but I think you have to reassure yourself that everything that you've poured into this application, whether it be your personal statement, your addendums, your resume, you have to reassure yourself that when you worked on those things, you were in grind mode, focus mode, and a law school giving you a rejection is not a reflection of who you are. It could be a number of things. It could be you just were not a good match for the school. You were not what the school was looking for. Of course, it's always going to be a possibility that your stats were not what the school needs, right? But I don't think it's fair to think you're the problem, right? Especially when it's the first school. I really had that issue. And like I said, I wanted to rewrite my personal statement. I was just spiraling. And I think it's fair to have these thoughts. I think it's okay to go through the emotions, but trust yourself and trust that you are a strong applicant and trust that you know what you're doing. Trust that everything that you wrote is really who you are and who you want to sell to law schools. Not every time that you get an outcome that you're not proud of, do you have to change yourself. Because sometimes rejection is redirection. So I just really wanted to add that. And then I want to talk about the next thing that happened. So after I got my rejection, I then ended up getting a waitlist. And this waitlist came from DePaul University in Chicago. And this for me just gave me a boost of confidence and I just had so much optimism. I couldn't believe that from a rejection, I went to a wait list. Now, many people might be like, Graciela, it's just a wait list, it's not a big deal. But I'm not a person to look at the negative of things. I'm the person to look at the positive of things. So I was like, wow, a school kind of wants me. A school maybe wants me. A school's gonna say they might have a seat for me. So that was kind of just the way I was approaching things. The next thing I want to talk about is when you get an answer from your top choice law school. And my top choice law school was my alma mater. It was the University of Arizona. That is where I went to undergrad. Be quite honest with you all, that is where my love for the law grew. It was when I went to the University of Arizona and I majored in law and I had so many internships at different law firms. This is where I knew that I belong in the legal field. I ended up getting waitlisted from the University of Arizona, and it was a roller coaster of emotions. I was actually in a meeting with my boss when the email of a status update came. I logged in and I got obviously a letter saying that I was waitlisted. And in that moment, I wanted to cry, but obviously I was in a meeting and I had to be professional. My boss did say, it's better than a rejection because I think you would be devastated if you were rejected. And I was like, yeah, you're right. But I was devastated regardless. I kid you not. I cried for 12 hours straight. I had a flight to New York that same day, later in the evening, and I cried from the moment I got off that phone call with my boss up until when I got on the plane. So it was a lot. And I think for me, the emotions were all over the place. I'm obviously an Arizona native, so thinking that one law school from Arizona rejected me and another one waitlisted me, and knowing that I most likely had to go out of state to go to law school was like a rude awakening, especially because like I have only lived in Arizona my whole life. I've always lived at home. And yeah, so I think that's part of the reason why I cried so much. But I will say that I can't relate to people that get rejected from their first choice, but I definitely know how it feels like to, in a way, I guess, be rejected, I guess. And it's not easy. So I really feel for people that are in that position. And once again, I feel like sometimes rejection is redirection, and I really mean that. So just to recap that little rant session, um, I talked about three law schools, and I was rejected at Arizona State. I was waitlisted at DePaul University, and I was waitlisted at the University of Arizona. I'm going to go through all the other law schools I applied to, and I'm going to tell you what was the outcome. So then I applied to the University of Arkansas. I always want to say Arkansas. Have you all seen that video? Like, America, why is this Kansas and this is not Arkansas? So I'm sorry, my brain just, I've conditioned myself. But I withdrew my application at this law school. There is no reason why I did it. It's just by the time that they emailed me requesting additional information, I was already accepted at a few law schools, and I kind of already had made my decision. So I was like, if I know that I'm gonna go somewhere else, I don't want to waste their time, especially with this like super busy cycle. So I just went ahead and withdrew my application. I then got waitlisted at California Western in San Diego. I actually removed myself from the waitlist. I did visit that law school and I just didn't feel a connection. I also then got waitlisted at the University of Cincinnati. Creighton, which is in Nebraska, ghosted me, so I never heard back from them. I was waitlisted at DePaul University, which was in Chicago, or is in Chicago. I got rejected from Fordham, which is in New York City. I got rejected from George Washington, and I got rejected from Miami Law. I will say, not to be like that person, like, oh, they rejected me, but I will say that some of these law schools I applied to super late in the cycle. I'm talking like January-ish. So I do wonder what would have happened if I applied earlier. But again, I think everything's for a reason, so I'm not going to sweat it that much. I then have New England Law, which I was accepted at with scholarship money, and then the University of San Diego, where I was rejected, University of Pittsburgh, where I was accepted and I will be attending. Then there is Seattle University. I was waitlisted here, and then I was also automatically, I don't know how to say it. I was automatically put into like a waitlist for this program they have for like their summer, like, I don't know how to explain it, like a summer 1L pre class, where if you do good enough in that and you prove that you could be a good law student, they actually admit you into their 1L incoming class. But obviously I was waitlisted into that, and to this day I don't know if I ever got in or not, especially with like the summer program. I think it was starting either in June or May, so there's that. I got accepted at Suffolk in Boston with scholarship money, and then I got rejected from Vanderbilt, and then I got waitlisted at Woodnear. So that is all the 18 law schools that I applied to. And now I want to talk about some questions that I've been getting on the JD Next consistently. If you all don't follow me on TikTok, I'm not even going to say it went viral. It did not go viral. I just happened to get a lot of views and a lot of comments on that video, and there's just people that were starting to message me, which I completely appreciate. So I just wanted to make like this quick little Q&A, and hopefully the question that you might have I address. So I talk about this more on my TikTok, so if you do want more of that kind of content that's a little bit faster, then I would suggest going to my TikTok. But let me get into the questions. So, a question that I persistently get is, do I think the JD Next was worth it? I am going to say every single time, yes, 100%, I do think it was worth it. But I do think there is caveats, and I think that my situation is completely different than someone else's situation. So every time I answer this question, I want people to recognize where I'm coming from and why I have this point of view and why it might be different than yours or somebody else's. I say the JD Next was 100% worth it because I truly believe it is the reason why I got admitted into law school. There is nowhere that I have seen a person has been admitted into law school with a LSAT of a 136. I've seen people been admitted with like 142 and higher, but I've never seen a 136. Obviously, I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. I'm just saying I've never heard of that personally. And I know that my LSAT score was low. I don't hide that from anybody. I tell everybody my LSAT score. So, with all that being said, I truly believe that the JD Next was the reason why I was admitted into law school. I also think I was a really good candidate if I wouldn't have had a bad LSAT score, right? Like, I have a resume that's full of experience, my letter of recommendations were strong, and I think I'm a person with like good standards and morals and ethics, and I think I would be a great attorney, like, if I'm just being very honest. So when people ask me if I think it was worth it, yes, 100%. This is the reason why I'm going to be starting law school this fall. But here's the caveats, and let me say this with like a little asterisk. It all varies, and I think it, again, depends on your situation. So let me talk about the caveats. If you need scholarship money to go to law school, if you are depending on a full ride to go to law school, I think that the JD Next may not be your pathway. Now, I say that as someone that did get scholarship money with all three acceptances. But if I'm being very honest with you all, for me, the cost of attendance for law school was never a hurdle, if that makes sense. I'm very blessed that my family told me from the start when I was starting this process, even 4 years ago, that they were going to financially support me throughout law school. So I knew that paying for law school was never going to be a hurdle that was going to hinder me from going to law school. Now, having a bad GPA and having a bad LSAT was the bigger hurdle that I had to worry about, but I never had to worry about paying for law school. So in my mind, when I was going through this whole cycle, I kept telling myself, all I need is one, all I need is one. And quite honestly, if I didn't get any scholarship money, that wasn't going to change whether I went to that law school or not. I know that I'm extremely blessed when I share this situation with you all, and trust me, I recognize this privilege, and I hope it doesn't come off as an entitled way. If I'm being very honest, this is just my truth and my reality and the situation that I was in. So to recap, um, if you really need a full ride or you need scholarship money to go to law school, I don't think that the JD Next can get you there yet. Like I said, in the future, as more people take it, as more schools are open to accepting it, as it becomes more competitive, this might change. The second caveat that I think exists with the JD Next is if you want to go to a higher ranked law school. Now, once again, I was in a different situation. I didn't care where I went to law school. All I wanted to go was to a law school, any law school, like that's it, point blank, period. Obviously, I was very cautious about like predatory law schools, but I really didn't care where I was going to go to law school. I just felt like my timeline was running out and I wanted to get there as soon as possible. Does this mean that this is right of me? No, of course not. But I'm just talking about my situation. So if you want to go to a higher ranked law school, I definitely don't think that the JD Next is the pathway just yet. While there is higher ranked law schools on the list, obviously, as we know, Georgetown says that they're on the list for the variants, but they don't actually accept the JD Next at this time. I think the only other higher ranked law school is Vanderbilt, and I was rejected from there. If you want to go to a higher ranked law school, I'm just telling you, I think at this time, through the JD Next, it's not a possibility yet. Yeah. So when people ask me if the JD Next is worth it, I say yes, 100%. I do think so. I think it was a reason why I was admitted into law school, but there are those two caveats that I just explained. So I think it's really important to understand where I'm coming from when I'm answering these questions. Other questions that people have asked me about the JD Next and the LSAT is if you can technically hide your LSAT score and just submit your JD Next. I tell people no, you cannot. Unless that score is invalid for whatever reason, it still has to be reported to law schools. And the other thing is that most law schools accept applications through the LSAC portal. The LSAC portal is the exact same place that you go to register for LSATs. So there's no way to really divide the two. Sending your JD Next score is a separate portal, and it gets to law schools through a completely separate way. So I think it's really important that I tell people that like there's not really a way to hide your LSAT. And trust me, I learned the hard way. Like I obviously really wanted to hide that 136, but I couldn't, and that's why I explained it in a addendum. Another thing, or I guess more of like an update that I learned just last week. So when I took the JD Next, it was $299. It's gone up to $399, which I think is pretty insane for it to go up $100 in a year. Also, when I took it, we were able to send as many law schools our scores, and we had like no limitations. I just found out that now you're only allowed to send 3 law schools your score, and you have to pay for the additional schools you apply to, which I find very ridiculous because that's kind of how they sold the program. But obviously, like, I can't control that. I'm just somebody on the internet talking about their experience. But I did want to say that because I don't want to misinform people. So yeah, I really hope I clear the air on that. And I'm sorry if I was, giving misinformation. I never meant to. It's just when I took this last year, that was the truth. So yeah. So let me answer a little bit more rapid fire JD Next questions that I have written down here. So here's the first tip I have. It's not really a question, but it's a tip, is try to take the JD Next as early as possible. I took the course in May with the exam in July, and I had my score by July. So that gave me about like a month and a half to figure out if I was going to apply the cycle, or if I got a score that I didn't like, I was going to have to pivot to the LSAT. So take it as early as you can. Also, I tell people this all the time. You can take your JD Next. You could submit an application and then let the law school know that you're taking the LSAT in a few months so that you will add the score once you have it, and that you can do that, right? So you can say like, please wait until I have my other score for you to fully consider my application. I don't know if people knew that you can do that. Obviously, I didn't do that because I didn't take the LSAT again, but yeah, just so that you know. And yes, you can apply early decision if you have your score ready and if the law school accepts the JD Next score. The test is proctored. It's AI proctored. Please don't use your phone during the break. I didn't, but I'm just saying. Something that people ask me all the time is it easier or harder than the LSAT? I'm going to say it was easier than the LSAT, but also keep in mind that the JD Next is tailored more to the way I learn and the way that I interpret information and the way that I get tested on it. So I do better in a traditional class to exam setting. And for me, just studying for the LSAT for that amount of time was not something I wanted to do. So I will always say, yes, the JD Next is easier than the LSAT. Are there practice exams available? When I took it, there was not. I don't know if this has changed. Someone commented on one of my TikToks that there is practice exams now, so that might be the case. I don't want to misinform you, so that's that. I talked about the cost of JD Next, but there is actually a scholarship or a fee waiver available for the JD Next. I will drop that, but it's basically a form where you kind of just talk about your financial situation, and then if they accept you, you get a scholarship, and I think you can pay like half the price or something like that. The course is self-paced, but you do have to complete about 100% of it, well, I guess all of it, to move to the exam. And they do have accessibility for students with disabilities. I haven't heard how that process goes, if I'm being very honest with you. And once again, I talked about the caveats of the JD Next. So sometimes people ask me, should I take the JD Next, LSAT, or both? I think it's going to depend on your situation and your type of learning and studying style. I always tell people, and this is just me being very honest, I wish that I would have not had an LSAT score. I wish that I would have just had a JD Next score. I think it would have made me just shine bright. And when you have a score that, how do I say this? When you have a score that that you can compare to the whole other pool of applicants, you're not going to shine as much when you have a 136 like me, right? So that's something that I always like told myself. Now, does this mean that I'm right? No, I'm just answering in my opinion. But if you've taken diagnostic tests and you do really good on the LSAT and you think you're going to do well when you take it, then go ahead and take both. Like, it's not going to hurt you. It could only help you. But that's just what I say is I wish I would have never taken the LSAT and the JD Next would have been an option. Obviously, I can't go back in time and change it, but that's just what I tell people. Can the JD Next help me get scholarships? I'm going to say yes, because I got scholarship money with every single acceptance I got. How should I study for the JD Next? I think I talked about this a little bit. It's very hands-off. So I would suggest that you read the cases, try to pull out the legal rule yourself. When they teach you like the IRAC, the issue, rule, facts, analysis, conclusion, try to see if you can do that by yourself. If you feel like you are really struggling, that's when I would say start Googling the cases, start looking for other resources. I really recommend Quimby and case briefs, and then I would just Google other things and see what would pop up, if I'm being very honest with you. But also study the way that you study the way that your brain enjoys more. So I think this is pretty much the end of the video. If you have any other questions you'd like me to address, please let me know. I will be happy to talk more on it, or message you or email you, or whatever is more helpful. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you so much for all the subscribers. I am like in shock that we're almost 40. That's freaking awesome. And I kind of still want to decide if I'm going to keep posting as I like start law school. But yeah, as of right now, I think the JD Next and sharing this experience has been amazing. I can't believe how much people didn't know about this exam. I can't believe how much this exam is going to change people's lives. I know it changed my life. And I might sound super cheesy, but I don't care. Like, this exam is the reason why I'm going to law school. And this is the reason why I say it's worth it. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this video, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.